Earlier today, the United States Department of Treasury's Office of Foreign Asset Control imposed sanctions in response to the April 4th, 2017 sarin attack on innocent civilians by the regime of Syrian dictator Assad. OFAC is sanctioning 271 employees of Syria's Scientific Studies and Research Center, the Syrian government agency responsible for developing and producing non-conventional weapons and means to deliver them. OFAC has targeted these 271 employees because they have expertise in chemistry and related fields or have worked in support of chemical weapons programs since at least 2012. Today's action, less than 3 weeks after the attack on Khan Sheikhoun, is one of the largest ever executed by OFAC. In a single action, we are more than doubling the number of individuals and entities sanctioned since the start of the Syrian conflict pursuant to Syria-related executive orders. These sweeping sanctions are intended to hold the Assad regime and those who support it, directly or indirectly, accountable for their blatant violations of the Chemical Weapons Convention in UN Security Council Resolution 21-118. The United States is sending a strong message with this action that we will not tolerate the use of chemical weapons by any actor, and we intend to hold the Assad regime accountable for its unacceptable behavior. The Treasury Department, together with the Department of State and our international partners, will continue to relentlessly pursue and shut down the financial networks of any individuals involved with Syria's production or use of chemical weapons. I'd also comment that recently we had sanctions on North Korea and Iran, and will also continue to add to and monitor those as appropriate. And with that, I'd be happy to take a few questions.
Is this the only round of sanctions we can expect against Syria in the wake of that chemical weapons attack, or are you considering more? And are you considering the possibility of sanctions against Russia for not going far enough to try to dissuade Assad?
We don't comment on the specifics of sanctions that we are going to do in the future. But again, what I will tell you is these sanction programs are very important, they're very effective, and we will continue to use them to the maximum amount available by law.
Secretary, on the budget, is the border wall a deal breaker for the president, even to the point of a government shutdown?
I'm not going to comment on the specifics of that, but what I will say is I was in a meeting this morning with Director Mick Mulvaney and other senior people. The president is working hard to keep the government open and addressing various issues.
Secretary, can you tell us what these sanctions actually do? What is different today than was different yesterday before OFAC moved?
Well, the sanctions are enormously important. So by identifying 271 additional people, these sanctions, as you know, will both freeze assets if there's assets here and prevent U.S. entities from doing business, as well as these sanctions have enormous impact with all of our partners around the world who also work with us on these issues.
We're not doing any business. Secretary, are we, sir? We're not doing any business.
As you know, the administration is trying to grapple with the Paris Climate Agreement and come to a decision on that. Where do you stand on it? Do you support staying in Paris or coming out?
Again, I would just comment that we're having discussions on that, and that's where I'll go on that.
Secretary, are you aware of any American companies doing business with those individuals that have sanctioned today?
Said last week there'd be a tax reform proposal released Wednesday.
He did indeed.
So
been widely reported.
Yeah. I imagine that surprised you a little bit. What can we expect?
Let me just first say, I've been working with the president for over the last year on his economic plan in regards to creating growth. The president is very determined that we can get to sustained economic growth of 3% or higher. We're working on tax reform, we're working on regulatory reform, we're looking on job creation, and this is something that on the tax side I've been meeting weekly with the House and the Senate on designing things And we'll be coming out, as the President said, with more details on Wednesday.
Secretary, thank you very much. Along the lines of tax reform, I know the specifics of the broad details will be delivered on Wednesday, but without getting into the specifics, what does the middle class gain if there is a simplification but also a loss of deductions, whatever they might be? If we lose the deductions, how does that help the middle class?
Well, let me just say, we've been clear on what the President's objectives are for tax reform. Middle income tax cut, a priority of the President's. Simplification. The average American should be able to do their taxes on a large postcard. Business tax reform. We need to make business taxes competitive, and we expect with doing that we will bring back trillions of dollars from offshore.
Secretary?
Thank you, sir. I guess the question I have is to sort of bounce off what John was asking about this announcement on Wednesday. It doesn't sound like we're going to get the finer details of what this tax reform package will entail. Is it a good idea to start talking about tax reform, something that you said can't be accomplished by August, when you don't have all the details?
Well, there'll be details that'll come out, and yes, I think it is important that we're talking about it, and we are going to move forward. I'll just take a couple more right there. Yes.
Can I just follow up on what Major was asking you? For those of us who are not completely clear about the 271 employees, are you suggesting by looking at these sanctions that there are U.S. companies, or they have holdings in the U.S., or they would be traveling or doing some sort of business that we're actually freezing or barring?
Again, I can't comment on the specifics of these sanctions beyond what we release, but I can assure you that when the U.S. puts out sanctions, they have impacts both here and throughout the world, and we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't think it is impactful. It's quite impactful.